Molly and the mechanic. There are so many railway lines on the island of Sodor. All of them lead to Brendam Docks and to the countryside. The signals were always there to keep the engines safe in case there are any other accidents. Many engines on Sodor have important jobs, especially Molly, who loves pulling passengers. One morning, the Fat Controller came to see Molly at Tidmouth Sheds. He had some important news. "The points are broken," he said, "and I would like you to take a mechanic to the signal box to get the points mended. And then all of the engines will finish their jobs at tea time." "Yes, sir," Molly said eagerly. And she puffed away out of Tidmouth Sheds to collect the engineer. Until at last, Molly was on her way to the station to collect the important mechanic. She was feeling very excited. But many of the engines had to wait outside their sheds until Molly collected the mechanic and took him to the signal box until the points were mended. The engines were very cross. Until at last, Molly arrived at the station just in time when she saw a strange-looking man with a mechanic suit on. Molly was sure that it was the important passenger. Get in quickly, please," she whistled eagerly. The man got in, but the station master was worried. "Wait, Molly," he said. "Your passengers haven't arrived yet. There's only a few more and then you can take off from the station." "I have to hurry up," snapped Molly. "I have an important passenger to take to the signal box," she said. And with that, Molly puffed away. Moments after, Molly went racing past by Edward. And she rattled past by James. "Look at me now, James," she boasted. "Important passenger coming through." James was feeling very cross. Meanwhile, back at the station, the mechanic had already arrived when the signalman told him that he had missed his train. "Darn it," he said. If I'm late, the points will stay as usual," he said, "and I'll never be able to fix them on time." At the signal box, Thomas was waiting until at last Molly arrived just in time. "Here I am, Thomas," she said. The mechanic is here right now." But the man who came out of the coaches was not the same mechanic who was supposed to be mending the tracks. "I'm confused," he said. "I thought Molly was supposed to take me to Brendam Docks," he said. "Oops," cried Molly. "I've just picked up the wrong mechanic. I'll have to go back." "You can't now," her driver said. Your coaches might derail if you do that." Then Thomas had an idea. "Why don't we switch tracks?" he said. Molly agreed to the idea and was happy with it. And then Molly's driver and fireman quickly uncoupled Molly from her coaches. And then the two engines switched tracks and Molly reversed quickly out of the signal box to find the mechanic at the station. On her way, she met James, who was blocking her way. "Get out of the way," Molly said impatiently. "I have to find the mechanic before it's too late." "It's already too late," said said James crossly. If I back out of the way, that would mean Edward will be blocking my way too. Molly felt awful, and she couldn't think what to do. Then she had an idea. She told her plan to James. Great idea, he said. I'll tell Edward. And with that, James decided the plan of Molly's that Molly made to find Edward and tell him to bring in the mechanic. Edward was at the docks when he saw James backing in front of him. Then James told Edward about Molly's plan. Good idea, said Edward. I'll bring the mechanic right away, he said, and he puffed away. The mechanic was at the station still waiting when Edward arrived. Hop on board, he said. We all need to get back on our tracks again, he said. Then the mechanic climbed on board Edward, and Edward steamed out of the station. Until at last, Edward dropped the mechanic off to James, and the mechanic climbed on board James's cab, and James steamed ahead. Back at the big station, Molly was waiting and hoping that James would arrive with the mechanic. And indeed he did. Here you are, James said to the mechanic, and at last the mechanic also climbed on board Molly, and Molly steamed on. At last, Molly arrived at the signal box. Then at last, the points were mended. Thank you, Molly, said Thomas. Now the other engines can start work again, he said happily. And indeed, he was right. Molly came back to pulling passengers, and many of the other engines all started their usual jobs in the night. As soon as Molly finished delivering her passengers, she also came to thank James and Edward for helping her. Thank you for helping me out, she said happily. After all, an important and proud engine like me does need help, especially when she's painted yellow, she said happily. And then James and Edward couldn't agree more with the same thing with their own liveries.